It is indeed a pleasure for me to come all the way from Mumbai, and thanks, Nan, for you, that you really brought me out of my routine. And I'm still dozing off with the Mumbai time. What I'm going to do is, when she talked with me about Beyond Neuron, I was wondering what Ayurveda can offer, because in our system, we do not have brain or nervous system. Whereas many other tissue systems, as I will explain, are there. We do not recognize brain as an organ. That's very interesting. And that is what made me thinking, and I looked at my own practice, because we don't have much studies done in India. So what I'm going to do is take you to a very different paradigm of a system, a knowledge system. Ayurveda has different meaning and different perceptions. My effort will be to share with you what Ayurveda, what are the bases of understanding disease, illnesses, how to interpret mind-body relationship, and then share few examples from my practice. And if Ayurveda says that you cannot separate out mind, body, and we call it Atman, and it is desirable that the physician has to look into the spirit of the person. There is a basic necessity of an Ayurvedic physician. And if you don't do that, if you do not get into the psyche of the person and you do not understand what the patient represents, I don't think you can heal that patient clearly. And that is where my whole presentation is based on that philosophy. We basically believe that the human life is a balance between the biosphere and the cosmosphere. We believe that, of course, modern science now talks about multiple universes, and one universe coming out of the other universe, and that has been recognized in the Indian philosophies. So even the human life is an aberration of a cyclic process which is going on, and that is why the desire of an individual is always to go back to the cycle. So this is the basic principle on which we build our theory. So the whole approach of human life as a illness and health is to keep on balancing between you and the environment. So that forms the basis of Ayurveda. Now you must have heard about most of the Oriental systems of medicine, including Ayurveda, China, TCM, Korean medicine, Tibetan medicine. Most of them have 5 Omni substances. People have used different names. But it is very logical, because human mind, and if human mind has created these systems, we can perceive the outside world only by 5 senses. It's common. So it's very logical for us in our knowledge base to divide whatever we perceive into 5 categories. So it is not just an elemental or a philosophical basis, but it is very common sense that if I can perceive the outside world by only 5 senses, I'd as well categorize the outside world in those 5 categories. And that is what we call as 5 Omni substances. There are no similar English words, and that is why I just stick to whatever the words which are nearest to that. So we call it ether, air, fire, water, and earth. Well, they are only representative. And as you can see, each one of represent a sense, each a different sense. And if you look at the modern parallels, whereas the ether denotes intracellular spaces, water will go about taste and fluidity and homeostasis, the earth will talk about the skeletal systems, the bone, cartilage, and hair, and air basically is nervine activity, and fire will correlate with the digestion and the color of the skin and things. But very interestingly, this slide becomes very important for us. When I was a student in Ayurveda College, I used to say, why the hell I have to learn this, It was some philosophical thing. But today, after 43 years of practice, I understand it better. Because when we think of the space, we identify that there are 9 basic mula dravyas, we call it omni substances, or causal factors. So it's very interesting that the 5 omni substances that are perceived by the human body, in addition to that, the human mind has accepted the space and time. Atman, that is spirit, also is a part of the basic structural processes. So what we say is that these are the 9 fundamental causal factors. The word is dravya, English translation is substance, but that doesn't justify the word. I would like to use the word mula dravyas, the causal factors which are there. So, now what are these? They are very easily defined. Anything that has a cause and effect. As we can see, there is an attribute, there is a function. When you are able to correlate these two, then it is called as a causal factor. And these 9 are known to be the causal factor of the human life and the universe. So they are there in the outside world and they are there in you. And that is how you correlate. So this to me, as now physics is advancing more and more, and we are talking about physics and biology coming together, I think this has got more and more meaning as an interactive process actually. Then we come to these 3 humoral systems. I am sure many of you might have heard about it. But why only 3? We correlate with sun, moon and air outside because in a physical matter, there are always 3 things. There is an ever moment, change and form, moment, change and form, moment, change and form. Whether it's physical matter outside or whether in your body. So it makes sense to say that there is a movement, there is a transition, transformation, change, and there is a formation. There is a cyclic process which is going on, and that is why we divide what we call as the 3 dosha theories or 3 humoral systems. And these 3 humoral systems are the one which represent the 5 omni substances which I talked about earlier. In other words, the air is always the air system, the functional system which we call it air system or vayu system, is responsible for transition, transportation. Like even the word which I am speaking and coming to your ear is also part of the process. What you digest that word, how you memorize it, that's a part of change, and how you store it, and when it becomes a memory that Dr. Bhatt had spoken on such and such time at a particular thing, that becomes kapha. There is a third part. So we are always in the form of moment, change and form. Now this is a very crude way, but the same thing happens with our food, the same thing happens with our air that we inhale, and so and so. The living body has been considered to be comprised of 4. The body, which is a matter, the senses, the mind and the spirit. The whole world of that spirit may tell us, what is this spiritualism about. And when we look at the basic philosophy, the basic structure, we realize that it is nothing to do with the religious way we think of spiritualism, but it is an evolutionary process where you have come out of a cycle and you go back to the cycle. The desire of an aberration to go back to the cycle, that is all what spiritualism is all. What we think is that spirit is part of identification with the cosmos, and your desire to go back, your desire to evolve, your desire to go back to the cyclic form, that is all what spirit is about. Mind, now I am talking about mind. It's very interesting that the word sattva, which I will be using again in the next few slides, mind is also identified as a sattva. And mind is the only sense which is identified with cognitive as well as the motor functions. There are 11 senses, as we know, according to Ayurveda, 5 motor, 5 neuron, and the mind is both. But what is important here is that it has its own characteristic, and these are very unique to mind. The mind has been described to be embedded within Atman. The what we call as spirit, mind is in spirit, mind is in body. And it is single, it functions within the body. It is the smallest possible micro, I don't have any other word to describe it. It is the smallest component of human life. It is always unstable. It is quickest. It is immortal. It is without shape. It is infinite. At the end it says, this Trigunatmak, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, which I will explain in the next slide. How do you recognize mind? The fact that a knowledge, I am aware about something and I am not aware of something. I am looking at it, I recognize the red shirt and I look at the blue shirt. Now that recognition of a red or blue and not recognition of other thing, that itself is mind. Because my mind goes to the blue shirt or my mind goes to the red shirt. At that time I am not aware about the other thing. That itself shows that mind recognizes an absence and reality of substance. That is what mind is all about. My mind goes to one place, my mind goes to other place, it recognizes it and doesn't recognize remaining. And that's the characteristic of mind is. What are the functions? Assimilation of knowledge. It thinks, analyzes, expresses. It applies intellect. There is what we call as a decisive factor there. Mind is responsible for the self-control. It recognizes the other systems. It recognizes the other existence also. And it gives a functional response to anything that happens. In other words, it is a sensory impulse which is situated in the whole body. This slide I could have removed this slide, but I thought it appropriate to bring it here. In the Indian philosophy, we say that the spiritualism, as we call, there is a sattva, rajas and tamas. And we say that rajas, the second part, is more about passion, and tamas is more ignorance. In a symbolic form, we show tamas as dark. The dark is nothing else but it's ignorance. If a person is ignorant about his own existence and what he's doing, he's considered as tamasic. A person who is an alcoholic, for example, and he knows that he's damaging himself and still continues, we will identify him as ignorance. Now, this is what tamas means. It's not dark. It's physically we express it by darkness, and whereas sattva we show lightness. But the approach of the philosophy is that you have to go from dark to light. You have to go from down to up. The reason is that going back to the cyclic phase itself is considered upward movement. So anything that is upward is considered sattvic, anything that is downward is considered as tamasic, and anything that is in between is called as rajasic or passion. So passion comes in between. The desire to liberate yourself or to go towards your cycle is considered sattva, and remaining in the places that you are is considered as ignorance. Now let's come to the body. Now this is a very old structure, and I think about 100-150 years back there was a theory of Sheldon which is still relevant to me, and that is ectomorphy, mesomorphy and endomorphy. And this ectomorphy, mesomorphy and endomorphy came from, I think, from these traditional systems of medicine, where you can see the right side, which is Modavata, where the nervous system is very big. You see the middle one, where the digestive system is more prominent. And when you see the left one, where what we call is kapha, the phlegmatic phase, phlegmatic type, where the fatness is more visible. So these are the three types of prakritis or constitutions of people that we define. And we categorize the whole all people into 7 categories. 3, these combinations of each, 2 of each, and if there are all the 3 are there. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a mind and body relationship, as you can see from the ectomorphy, mesomorphy and endomorphy is visible here. And the mind and body constitute a characteristic of a person, which we divide into 7 categories. We also have a system of what we call as dhatus or metabolites. We have whatever we inhale, so whatever we take as a food, it's not only food but air, water and food, gets converted into 7 metabolites. The first one is plasmolytic, the second one is blood, third one is the muscle, fourth one adipose tissue, the bone tissues, the bone marrow and reproductive juices. It's very interesting that this theory of 7 metabolites also correlates with our calendar. That what you eat today, what you inhale today and what you drink today actually becomes a part of body at the end of 7th day, that is 8th day. That is how we believe in it. And even, many times when we do fasting, when we prescribe fasting, in some cases, we give 1 day, 3 day or 7 or 8 day fasting. If you come to India in July and August, and Muslims also in Ramadan, and some Hindus and different Jains, we all have this fasting phenomena, mainly during July and August. Because there is air, rains, the nature is imbalanced, irregular, and the body has to really adapt to that. And because it is the phase when maximum diseases may occur, all religions prescribe fasting in one or the other form. There's an indirect way of balancing out your systems. And that is what makes this interesting. And each one has got its own byproducts. Like for example, plasmolytic system has the mother's milk as the byproduct. The blood has the tendons and vessels and the bile as the byproduct, and so on. What I'm trying to say is that the whole process is not as vague as one might think about it, but there is a very systematic way of interpreting the whole metabolism. As you can see, further to those 7, the body is supposed to be divided into what we call as channels. The whole body is full of channels. In Sanskrit we say Srotomayam hi shariram. The whole body is full of channels. But these channels are of 13 types. 7 the metabolites which I talked about. And there are air, water and food, and the 3 fecal matters, the urine and the sweat. Now here it will be very interesting that most of the time we only concentrate on the fecal matter. We talk about digestion, the feces to be thrown out of the body. But in recent times when we look at the diabetes today, we don't think of what happens to your urinary system. When you sit in an air-conditioned, when I fly from Mumbai to New York, 15 hours like a packaged good, what happens to my body that I don't know. And if that packaged goods is formed as a habit of again and again, I'm bound to develop diabetes. So we look at it as a urinary process which is being rejected. We all recognize most of the time the constipation as one of the problems, but we do not recognize the system like urinary system or sweating, for example. I know people who are going in gym in the morning, they will go in the afternoon, which is according to us is the wrong time, in an air-conditioned room where the sweating is occurring but it gets dried up, and then they develop skin diseases. So we don't realize what we are doing because we are always learned to keep we are trying to win over the nature. So outside is a 45 degree temperature, 41 degree temperature in a city like Mumbai, and you are in an air-conditioned room at 18 degrees trying to sweat out. I don't know what is happening to your body at that time. So now I'm coming to the fire. Why this is very important? The concept of fire as a Agni, as a main transformation factor is very, very important. Fire, without fire there cannot be change. Everybody knows about it. So the biliary system acts within the element of fire. And these fires are also of 13 types. It's very interesting that, we have the main GI tract and we have the 7 metabolites. Each one has its own fire. So for example, let me give a very interesting story so you will understand better. You have diabetes and you have tuberculosis. In clinical manifestation, both these diseases have common manifestation of hair and nail growth. Now this is where the clinical efficiency of Ayurveda comes out. Ayurveda is very rich in clinical signs and symptoms. More than 6,000 signs and symptoms I describe. And very interesting is that diabetes has the sign and symptom of hair and nail growth. And tuberculosis also has hair and nail growth. Both are contradictory in etiology according to Ayurveda. In work case, what happens is that because there is not enough nourishment and there is no capacity for the body to digest, the metabolites come up to that stage and their hair and nail grow because they are not able to get converted into the next one. But in diabetes, which is an altogether different kind of disease process, it comes, and because of overloading of that, there is hair and nail growth. So it is very interesting that there are 2 different diseases. Both have got different kind of etiology. One is what we call as emaciation, other is more over nourishment, and still they have the same clinical sign and symptom. Now this is the beauty of Ayurveda, because that is where we will call that here a specific metabolite Agni, fire, is deranged. But when I am treating, my approach is going to be different. If I treat tuberculosis, I will treat differently. If I treat diabetes, I am going to treat differently. And that is where the whole beauty lies. This is why I give you this example. Very interesting. We talk about the 5 Omni substances also. Most simple example is when you have an acute diarrhea, you cannot take only water. Ideally, you should take water so that dehydration doesn't occur. The same water, when you put into 5 or 7% saline, absorbed by the body. Now, salt acts as fire and it helps you to retain that water which is required to be retained by the body. So that 5 to 7% saline water, the salt which is there in that water makes the whole change. And this is what Agni is. So in that I will say, Jal Agni, the fire of the water has been balanced because of the presence of salt. This is all what Ayurveda is all about. Now what is this all? If you look at the physical part, how do I correlate biology with biological entity with physical entity? To me, this is called as Guna or attributes. We call it in Sanskrit, we call it Guna. Normally the English translation is property, but I prefer the word attributes. Ayurveda believes that there are 20 attributes between the physical masses. Heavy, light. Now when I say heavy, I say that a pastry is going to be heavy for me and alcohol is going to be light for me. How to interpret? It means that my metabolic rate is going to be slowed down when I am having a heavy stuff. My metabolic rate is going to be increased when I am having a light stuff. You have also said that you are becoming lighter with alcohol and you are becoming heavy with a pastry. Now this is how we interpret the words. When you say slow and sharp, if I am going to take chilies, the red paprikas, then I know they are going to be sharp and they are going to affect me very, very quickly. On the other hand, if I take a specific type of a cereal, it's going to be slow. It's going to make it easy. And if I want to put on weight, I will do that. If I want to lose weight, I will go for something which is sharp and pungent. So this is how we keep on balancing. So this 20, there are 10 pairs, and this 10 pairs of attributes is all that I call it as a interplay of gunas, interplay of physical attributes. So in here, mind my words, physical attributes are very important. So whereas the biological component is only a part of living and non-living, but otherwise it is an interplay. I am in this room, and this room might be, I have a lot to go. Okay, I will try to finish it. We come to Chikitsa and I go to the last bottom part, and that is called as Sattva Vajai. It is one kind of a treatment. There are different approaches in human, the last one on the bottom is what we call as controlling mind, is an important approach to treatment. What I am going to do is I am going to quickly share with you a few examples. These are the list of, I have 40 years of practice, I have a huge list of patients, but I picked a few. The first patient had undergone psychotherapy, electrical shocks, 9 years history. She was developing a red skin patch at the back and nobody was able to treat. She was identified variety of things. Somewhere I could identify that she had a problem with her partner, recognition, a simple talking with her and then giving treatment, medical treatment, helped her relieve of pain after 9.5 years. There was a young lady who lost her father, which developed into amenorrhea. Bronchial asthma, everybody knows that it gets provoked because of psychological reasons. I have a lady right now who is my patient, multiple sclerosis, loss of empathy from the partner. She is right now hospitalized just last week because repeatedly this has been happening. Acne, everybody knows many times it is because of the psychological reasons. Many skin problems. There was another case which was cancer. An elderly woman came to me and I was really surprised why there is an acute onset of this cancer. Loss of husband and demanding son that led into a very peculiar kind of a cancerous situation. There was a transgender in Indian society is yet to be accepted, diabetes and blood pressure. I want to talk about diabetes. I don't know whether there is a history or not, any epidemiological studies, but my observation is that acute onset of diabetes is observed in people who lose something suddenly. I've seen acute onset in 10 to 15 days. Somebody losing partner, somebody losing position, somebody losing money, somebody losing business, and they're developing diabetes suddenly. This has been described in Ayurveda as a grief generating generating diabetes, but I have not seen a world literature saying specific about this. Irritable bowel syndrome, there are many cases, we'll talk about it. And Parkinson's, excessive sex demand leading to Parkinson's. Now I'm talking about a few more cases. A childhood impact, because a girl child was born, that lead to schizophrenic condition of the girl, depression, brother dominance, and all these cases came to me not for psychological problems, mind well, they came to me for all medical problems. But I had to identify their medical problem along with some one or other aspects where I could help it. And again, I did not give any psychotropic drugs. I did not give anything which could be identified with brain or psychotropic in that sense. I continued with my treatment, but recognizing and selecting the right kind of herbs, selecting the right kind of therapies, that is what helped. We talked about dementia, is another area where we can do wonderful things. Sometimes there could be situations where we use the traditional medicines like aconite, and they can also lead to dementia. This was my very odd observation, that aconite is used in Ayurvedic medicine, and some of the toxic plants are used in Ayurvedic medicine in the right manner. But if you don't use in the right manner, that can also lead to dementia. I'm having another meeting on 9th, and I'm going to talk about cancers. I have seen people dealing with cancer in a very variety of forms. Somebody who fights back, somebody who just surrenders, some people who just survive. And to me, the whole group of cancer patients has been a very, very interesting from both the mind point of view and the pain point of view. And that is where I think it can open up a new area of research. Now, does it mean that I'm only sharing these examples, but there are textual references? I will not go through all these. There are, in Ayurvedic literature, every disease has been identified, described as causative factors, then symptoms as complication of disease, and symptoms as incurable. In each of these, you will find many examples from text. I will not be able to read each one, but I can say grief leading to bleeding disorders. So, for example, hatred, a man who is having that attitude of hatred leading to skin disorder. Liver is another area. Liver is a very interesting organ from mind point of view. Causative, symptomological, and complication. Everywhere, liver plays a very important role in the anxiety, in the anger, and so and so. Anemia, a sorrowness, the fearless, lack of desire to live. These are very common. Interesting is fevers. I have still not been able to grasp it, but in Ayurveda we have 108 kinds of fevers described. And my teacher used to say that if you master the first chapter on fever, then you will master Ayurveda. Unfortunately, I have not been able to do it yet, because I have yet to see those 108 kinds of fevers. But fever is a very important phenomenon as far as the whole subject that we are discussing is concerned. But what we have done is that we have started treating fever with simple aspirin, and we forget about all the other things, and then it gives rise to a variety of other illnesses continuously. So when fever comes, in our system we don't kill fever, we allow it to come. We treat it differently, and that's what makes the whole difference, you see. Another interesting will be worms. When you have worms in your system, you could be irritable, and you could be, similarly obesity. Obesity leads to ignorance. Now, how can you imagine that obesity can lead to ignorance, that you do not want to do something which is good for you? This is very interesting phenomena which is observed. Few things which I want to highlight, that there is a section called as Karmaja Bhava Vyadhi, diseases due to improper acts and various treatments. There is a separate chapters, and in fact there is a separate text on Karmaja diseases due to improper acts. And that opens up a huge variety of illnesses and what approaches could be done. Pregnancy and the fetal nutrition, and that in relation to food and the psychological conditions becomes another area of interest. There are therapeutics, drugs, and treatments which could be given in this kind of disorders. You were talking about some Alan work related to this. I was wondering whether we can do some Shirodhara treatments in the skin and the Shirobastis, or massages we do it in feet with medicinal plants. I think these are things which can have a very good and very easy to document and very easy to demonstrate kind of things. Last but not the least, today morning, as you can see, still I am lit. I came from 33 degrees to 1 degree. As I face this cold, I understand the value of warmth. As I feel the dryness, I understand the value of being wet. As I feel the need to cover myself, I realize the value of being open. And as I feel being aloof, I seek the touch to connect. This was my experience today morning at 5 o'clock. Ayurveda provides logical explanations of function and dysfunction of human life in the context of bio and cosmosphere. It can open up newer vistas to address serious illnesses. Thank you.